This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Late Late Show on Thursday, the 23rd of November, 2023. I'm your host, Paul Hazzard, and let me start by telling you what happened this week. Somebody managed to find the keys to the TTR studio here in Northern Ireland, unbolted the door, and let me out. What did I do? I'll tell you what I did. I went to Birmingham to the Schools and Academies show. I had a great day. Met up with the wonderful Tom Rogers, and together we manned the TTR stand. We met lots of interesting people. We did some fantastic interviews, and all of those will be winging their way to you through the airwaves very shortly. So big shout out to everybody who went to the show, and especially if you came round and spoke to us, and doubly especially if you gave us a short interview. Fantastic. Aren't the people of Birmingham wonderful? Absolutely great. I just love that Brummie accent. It's warm, it's kind, and you know what I saw? They smile. It's fantastic, you can't beat it. Boone, do you remember Boone? Boone was a Brummie, wasn't he? That was set in Birmingham. What am I talking about? You're all too young to remember that. Anyway, from Birmingham to America, and to a place that I believe I am unable to pronounce correctly, but I'm pretty sure my guest will put me right on that. And tonight, my guest is PE teacher Valerie Cheselden. Let's get to it.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello everybody. Hello Valerie, I can see you're in the studio. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Paul. It's great to be here.
Oh, that's great. You sound lovely and clear, all the way from America. And tell me, Valerie, how do you pronounce Maryland?
Maryland.
Maryland. I'm going to have to get used to that, aren't I?
It's okay. It is okay.
Valerie, you're very welcome to the show this evening. So you're in Maryland, which is 5 hours roughly behind us. So it's roughly coming up on 4:05 with you in the afternoon. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, it is about 4:05 here, and we are presently celebrating Thanksgiving here today with family and friends.
Oh, great. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Thanksgiving. We don't have it here in the UK and Ireland, but we probably just know it through films and things like that. So what's it all about and what happens?
Okay, yeah. So for Thanksgiving, we get together, family and friends from all over the place if we can. And it's basically like a family reunion style buffet dinner that you serve, and based off of what your tastes are, will be what is the main course for the day. So some families do seafood, some do lamb, some do ham, others do turkey. It all depends on your taste, but it's just a big family reunion that you have friends over, and you just eat and get together and catch up. It's a lot of fun.
Great. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah. And Valerie, is the history of it, is it to do with harvest? Is it like kind of harvest festivals that we might have here and giving thanks for the summer and the crops, or is it a different thing?
No, that is exactly what it is. It's giving thanks for the harvest.
Yeah.
Yes, you are right on it, Paul.
Very good. Yeah. So you're on holiday this week then?
I am, yes. In Maryland, we teach until Tuesday, and then after Tuesday at 4 p.m., depending on what grade level you teach. For me, I'm elementary, so we get out at 4, and then we're on break until Monday morning. So it's a
Wow.
nice little holiday
Yeah.
we have here that we can relax and just be mindful with our time.
Yeah. And all the more credit to you, Valerie, for tuning in and being a guest on your holiday. Thank you very much for that.
As I told you, Paul, I'm very passionate about family and friends as much as I am my job. So if I can do both in the same day, that's a win.
That sounds great. Yeah. And here, tell me this then. Do you have a holiday at Halloween as well?
No, no. The schools typically celebrate so fall break for Thanksgiving, winter break for Christmas, and
Right. Okay.
Easter. But the other holidays, such as Halloween, are not celebrated as in a break from school.
Okay, I see. Right. So this is your kind of main autumn holiday before Christmas?
That is correct, yes.
Good, good. So, Valerie, PE, you're a PE teacher, isn't that right?
That is correct, yes. I teach pre-K, which can consist of 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, all the way up
Yeah,
into 5th grade.
yeah. So, what drew you to be a PE teacher then?
I love being physically active and being healthy. I'm very passionate about it, and I wanted to be able to share that passion with others. And in order for me to do that effectively, I knew that I needed to be on the ground in the classroom, sharing my passion for that with young minds. And so that was the most effective way I could think of doing that, and reaching the most people. So that was my why for becoming a physical education teacher.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. Now, most of my experience is, post primary, as we would call it here, and a little bit into kind of university as well. And PE, and certainly when I was a youngster and going to school, PE was very much like sporty. It was about games and things. What happens with that younger age group? What does PE look like for them?
So I'm so glad you asked that, Paul, because we are no longer a skill based physical education program. We are now a standard based physical education program where we are teaching towards the standards at an elementary or primary level. We are teaching the foundations of PE and health. We are teaching them how to have cognitive skills, mental health, effective growth in their feelings, and psychomotor, which relates to their physical skills, which moves into their movement literacy. A well-designed PE program meets the needs of all students, keeping students active for most of their class time, teaching self-management, providing knowledge and skills to live a physically active lifestyle. And then what's most important is that they enjoy the experience and that everyone has that opportunity.
Yeah. Um, so what do they do then? Say you've got a period of time. What would it be? An hour on the timetable, and it's PE time. What are these children doing then?
So I see my students once a week for 50 minutes, pre-K students
Hmm.
for 35 minutes once a week.
Hmm.
We teach the same education rigor as other core subjects such as math, English, and science. Physical education programs in Maryland have a pacing guide. Everything is with a purpose. So we provide students with a planned sequential K through 12 standards-based program, curriculum and instruction that is designed to develop a student's motor skills, knowledge and behavior skills that will encourage and motivate them to live active lifestyles in and out of the school building.
Okay. Now that all sounds really advanced. How does that break down? How does that age group really get to grips with what they need to understand and do?
Mhm. We break it down into steps. So we have the students learn the foundation of each and every skill. So, for example, right now we're concluding our catching and throwing unit in Charles County, Maryland, which is where I teach. We have a
Yeah.
pacing guide where every school in the county is following the um, same unit. So if a student was to transfer from my school and their parents moved into a different school zone and now they have a different PE teacher at a new school, they're being taught the same thing. It might look
Mhm.
different, but they're being taught the same thing. So for a catching and throwing unit, we break it down so that the student understands into steps. And this is inclusive, providing equity for all, uh, making it color coded, teaching them you pick up the ball with your coloring hand, you step out with the opposite foot. You tell them that if it's an underhand throw, it's a lowercase L. If it's an upper hand throw, it's an uppercase L. So using terminology that they understand in order to execute the activity, the skill that you want them to do. And then eventually, after about 2 lessons, a student will start to execute those skills on their own independently. And then when they see a student who isn't quite there yet, they will go over and support that other student. So it's a growth process that takes 3 to 4 weeks for a basic skill, say underhand throwing, overhand throwing. And that is how the students are learning in our space. And then we move from independent to pairing students together, stations, into an activity that's whole group. And the whole class gets to enjoy what they just learned and show it off to all of their peers, not only in the physical education classroom, but out on recess on the playground, and then also at home with their parents and their friends.
Yeah, that's yeah, I'm getting a real picture now of what's happening. So the movement is kind of basic movements. So it's underarm throwing, overarm throwing, and then there's progress and building on that. And if I hear you rightly, there's a lot of cooperation going on between pairs and groups.
Yes, that is correct. There's a lot of support going on, positive feedback. We do a lot of peer to peer feedback, also
Hmm.
teacher to student feedback as the activity station, whatever stage we're in that learning of the skill towards the standard. They have someone there to hear them, correct them as they go along if they need that. And having a peer say it versus a teacher might be more comfortable for them. So we offer different variations of support as we move along.
Mm, yeah. And what age the youngest age group you teach, Valerie, is?
My pre-K group is my youngest group that I teach, and it can consist of age groups between 3 and 5 years old. About, no, 3 and 4 years old.
Okay, so they're very young, yeah. That's yeah, yeah. And would it not be a parent's responsibility to kind of ensure that a lot of this movement and the ability to have these moves as a repertoire, would it not be a parent's responsibility to make sure that's in place before they come to school?
Well, Paul, we are in a post-pandemic era, and as we move into this new um, phase in education, we are learning that the 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous daily activity that students ages 5 through 17 should be experiencing for most, did not occur during that
Mm,
pandemic phase.
yeah.
So less than 25% of students are engaged in physical activity outside of school. And this is due to a lot of factors. I wouldn't necessarily say it is up to one group or one person to initiate a skill that a child can learn. Do the students do these activities at home with their parents? I'm very sure that they do. I actually have quite a few families at my school that are very active and
Mm.
will challenge their children to work out with them, and they do all kinds of physical activities. But
Yeah.
there are also those families, Paul, that don't have those proactive family members, and therefore, if they want to go outside and do something active, they take a sibling, or maybe they can get their mom and dad involved.
Mm.
However, we live in a time now where parents are working 1 to 2 jobs just to make ends meet, and therefore most times students are left to independently focus on and practice their skills on their own. So a student that young probably plays independently with peers.
Mhm.
I'm sure parents do try to assist with a skill, not knowing that's what they're doing, rolling a ball back and forth. That's a
Sure.
pre-K physical education standard, having them learn how to roll that ball back and forth independently towards a stationary target, such as another student, or say bowling pins, for example. So
Yeah.
um, that's how a 3 or 4 year old learns a skill.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, that you start with specific skills like, underarm throwing and becoming more advanced and so on. Now, I know, Valerie, you are a big fan of Teachers Talk Radio. I'm pretty sure you listen to at least one episode a day. I wonder, did you listen to the episode I did recently with Rachel Jefferson Buchanan? Who, although an English girl, she lives in Australia, but she does something fairly similar to what you do. And she talked a lot about specific movements. And I know you're talking a lot about standards and reaching standards. But why are there particular movements that are important?
That's a great question, Paul. Specific movements are important. Going back to catching and throwing, that is a skill that is used in a lot of different sports. So, having those movements taught, locomotor movements, the fundamental motor skill movements, all of those movements are very important because it allows for a student to not only engage with their peers and participate in physical education class, but then also motivates and encourages them to become athletes outside of the classroom. So it will then have them become possibly involved with extracurricular activities with their rec center, become involved with a sport at their school. So the buildup of these skills and movement patterns is important so that they can learn how to live healthy and active lifestyles. So that's the whole point of physical education class, is to encourage individuals to want to become physically active for the rest of their life. It's very important because PE benefits improve concentration and focus, increase positive behavior choices. It helps their self-esteem as they grow up, and then it helps fight obesity and other health risks. So that's why these learning of these skills and these movements are that important. There's so many other things that physical education touches.
And you've already raised that, Valerie, and I'm kind of holding that off like, a very juicy, meaty part of a Thanksgiving dinner, just for a little while. But we
Okay.
are going to get to that. Um, but before we do, I'm just wondering, what is the state of kind of, physically, what is the state of people in America? How much do they need PE, movement, exercise, diet, nutrition?
Physical education has slowed down prior to the pandemic, and then from as young as 5 into adulthood, once the pandemic hit, at home physical education, physical activity just skyrocketed. Everyone had time then, as they were home, instead of going out and social networking, to focus on themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
for that reason, I feel that physical education, physical activity, health education has hit a pivotal point and where it is now a focal point, and schools and districts, communities are focusing on it. So we are looking at people taking better care of themselves, making sure that they're on a schedule, being able to eat better. Restaurants, schools, for example, are offering, farm to table choices, going
Wow.
green. So we have those options now, whereas before it was just some schools. And since the pandemic and us going back into school, we're now seeing more of a push for those healthier choices, those healthier habits, those daily routines, keeping those in check. So I'm seeing a spike of wanting to become more physically active and encouraging their youth to be part of physical education, extracurricular activities. So that's what I'm seeing.
So if I hear you right, over what you've said so far, PE, even at the very early stage that you're doing it, it's crucial, and it's very much an investment in Americans for the future. Would that be right?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, yeah. You used some lovely terms. You talked about movement literacy.
hmm
Can you tell us a little bit more about movement literacy?
Yes. So physical literacy is a whole child approach where students are learning how to move and use those movements in various forms. So locomotor skills, skipping, sliding, jumping, hopping, walking, marching, non-locomotor skills, stretching, twisting, turning, all types of movement activities students are becoming literate in and are able to apply those skills in different ways throughout the day, So that's movement literacy.
Yeah, great. And you began by talking about, the impact that PE has on mental health and well-being. Just just draw that link for me. How is there a link between physical and mental health?
Yes. So physical education, health education, they are two separate content areas. However, we try to incorporate both in the physical education classroom. So mental health is a part of health education, and right now it's being incorporated into physical education as social emotional learning, so SEL. So we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of social emotional learning in PE, and we're doing that by taking mindful movements, mindful minutes, mindful breathing. So mindful moments, essentially. And we
Yeah.
are incorporating these moments into our PE routine so that if a student is realizing they're having a meltdown, whether it be from they didn't get the color beanbag they wanted, or their team lost,
Mm.
students are learning how to self-regulate, and in self regulating their emotions, they will come up to me and they will ask me for a mindful moment. And I have a mindful moment wall set up in my space so that a student can utilize that space in mindful breathing, doing mindful stretches. So there's just different techniques that they can use to help with their mental health. And this will go with them into adulthood, because then they're able to understand, okay, I need to take a step back. And they'll have those strategies that they learned with me when they were 5. And by then, I'm very sure they will have advanced into other various forms. However, the very basics are taught in the physical education classroom. And that's how students are able to keep their mental health in a positive state of mind.
Yeah. Um, Tom Rogers is listening in, and as I said at the beginning, Tom and I were in Birmingham yesterday, and we had a great day out. We spoke to a couple of teachers, one of whom told us that she has a mindful wall in her staff room. We got really interested in that. So, what's on your mindful wall for these children, Valerie?
So I have a social emotional center. I have an emotional center where I used a movie that has different characters that students can
Hmm.
relate to. And each character has how they're feeling and then a positive quote. And so if they're too upset to want to communicate with me and they need to speak one on one with me versus independently, they're able to touch a poster on the wall or point to it and show me, okay, you're feeling sad right now. When you're ready, let me know how you're feeling. So we take our time. The other part of the wall is stretches. I have visual aids um, where students are
Yeah.
able to do stretches and like the savasana, the lotus, the tree pose, things of that nature. And then the mindful breathing techniques are something that I practice with my students from the time they enter my room. So starting from pre-K. So the students already know to sit down and practice their breathing. I always do it in threes. So I'll tell them to take a deep breath in through their nose, hold it,
Hmm.
and then breathe out through their mouth. Place their hand on their heart or their belly. And we call them some really neat names. We'll say the fire breathing or the lion breath or something to make it more relatable to them so that when they sit down, to them it's not, oh, I need to breathe, I'm so mad, and they're concentrating on that. Instead, they're concentrating on being a dragon or being a lion and making
Hmm.
that breath. So it changes their mindset.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah, I think we've plenty of staff and certainly a few politicians here who could maybe do with that mindful breathing and help them to focus their
I can
minds on
send you my
things.
posters over, Paul. I'll send them to you through email.
I think you should, Valerie. Definitely send it over. Yeah, Valerie, that sounds really sounds really fantastic. And I have a great sense and mental picture of what you do and how you do it. And I don't think it's all sweetness and light. You talked about some of them being upset and needing to talk to you and so on. But I wonder then, is 50 minutes enough in a week? Should children not be having more of that kind of physical education?
I'm very glad you brought that up. That's a whole can of other worms. But each school has its own. I say each school district has its own way of doing things because it's up to the districts how the schedule is created.
Hmm.
Now, in elementary, it's 50 minutes. Do I think that it's enough time? Absolutely not. I do not think it's enough time at an elementary level to be able to execute every standard that's inside the K through 12 framework for Maryland. There's just
Hmm.
not enough time. You want to be able to give them everything that you can. You want to encourage them to be physically active when they leave you, and you want them to have that aha moment because they learned that skill. That's why we go in and we do this job, is so that we can teach these young minds how to do a movement. And then when they realize they can do it, that smile that goes across their face, Paul, is absolutely worth it. We need more time so that all students can experience that moment and
Hmm.
not feel like they're being rushed or they can't do it because after 3 weeks or after 4 weeks, we need to then transition on to a new skill.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
50 minutes is not enough time. And I only see my students once a week. Now, pre K, I see them 35 minutes once a week, and they need more time too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's so many activities that physical educators really want to do with their students. We would
Hmm.
love to do so many activities with our kids and set it up to where it is engaging, it motivates them the second they walk in the door. And a lot of our physical educators across the globe do as best as they can with what they have to set it up and motivate them the second they walk in the door, because that's what you want, to have them excited to be there, ready to learn. And that way the focus is on you and what you're saying. Everyone wants to be there and support each other and participate. And you're able to make that happen because you have the time. So, for example, I had my schedule still 50 minutes, but I had a little bit of time in between the last 2 years. So, in the last 2 years, I was able to create a Mario Kart. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
We know Mario Kart here. Yep.
okay, all right.
Yep.
Created a Mario Kart circuit inside of my space. And
Right.
I played the music that is associated to that game. So when the
Yes.
kids walked in, they were so excited to be there. Even my own content specialist walked in and was excited to be there. And he was, I wish I was 5 again. I want to do this activity. So,
Yeah.
and the kids don't realize that you're teaching them
Yeah.
because they're having this wonderful experience with their friends that they're going to talk about later to their parents and probably play on their own or try to outside of the space. But it's just, that's what you want, Paul, is to be able to have the time to create an environment where learning takes place, and you don't have to worry about, are they grasping the concept of the skill? Are they able to execute it? With the little bit of time that we have, if we had more time, there would be so much more we could do, and it would just be mind-blowing. Unfortunately, though, like I said, that's a different topic for a different day there, Paul. That's a politician issue.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get you back someday, Valerie, and we can talk about that. But yes, that kind of learning where children are just utterly absorbed and engaged. And, people like Csikszentmihalyi and so on can call it flow. It happens with sports people, musicians. It can happen with teachers. It certainly can happen with pupils, students. But those moments are when the best teaching and the best learning, and indeed the best memories and so on, and commitment and motivation, I think that's when they all happen.
I agree with you. Absolutely. That is exactly when it happens. And,
Yeah.
Paul, it happens when a teacher is in love with their job. When you're passionate about your job and what you're teaching, your students see that. They see the energy you put into your lesson and the execution of the lesson being used through equipment. And then they're just engaged, Paul. They want to learn, they want to be there. And that's a totally different atmosphere than if you walk into a space where the person you're supposed to be with for the next hour is behaving as if they don't want to be there. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, you just have to have this positive atmosphere for these kids.
Yeah. And Valerie, your passion is absolutely infectious. We're thousands of miles away listening to you, and we're all hyped up here with your enthusiasm. Tell me this then. Do your colleagues who maybe teach other subjects or other parts of the curriculum, do they feel the same about the work that you do? Do they appreciate the work that you do and any impact it has on them and their subject?
Well, Paul, I will say that physical education teachers and the classroom is not seen as is not seen as being equal to a core subject. And
Okay.
so gaining the respect of your colleagues in the building and having them understand the importance of what you teach and that it is lifelong skills you are teaching, uh, that is its own mountain. You have to get the community and the school you're working in, treat your subject like it's equally as important. Do I feel that other teachers in my specific buildings see physical education as just important as science, math, and English? No, I do not think that they see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many conversations with colleagues where to them it's structured recess, and that's not the case at all. That's not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's how it's viewed. So you have to change the perspective of so many adults in the building just for them to treat you and your class as if it's just equally as important. There are times when PE teachers, I'm very sure across the globe, I know here in the United States, have their space given up to do, whether it's picture day, there's an assembly, it's a last minute uh, you know, guest coming in to speak to the school and they need to borrow your space, and now you're put out of your learning environment and have to find another learning environment. And if the weather's inclement, then you're pushed into someone else's classroom and hoping that there is one open. So it's a learning environment, Paul. You have to build that up in your program so that your administration and your colleagues in the building see you as equally as important. There's also testing that goes on, and the kids are taken during their related arts time.
Mm.
But again, that puts us where related arts is not seen as important as a core subject. Unfortunately, I disagree. Physical education, art, music, those are all equally as important. We're teaching lifelong skills. These are
Yeah,
skills that you take into adulthood.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. I think yes, I think unless you're in, a very modern, very well equipped school, it's probably the same here. Um, I know we have exams happen in December and, well, probably even November, December, and January, and certainly in May and June. And most schools use the gymnasium as the exam hall, and PE teachers they're just ousted. They've got to go somewhere. If the weather's fine, they may be able to go outdoors. If not, as you say, you know, they have to go to a classroom somewhere, and it's maybe not laid out in a way that's conducive to movement or PE or anything like that. Yeah. So Valerie, uh, oh, by the way, can I ask you, just go back one wee minute? What is a content specialist? Because you mentioned you had a content specialist in the room.
Yes. So, my content specialist is the head of physical and health education for the county that I work in. Some
Right.
counties in the state of Maryland have supervisors with
Hmm.
content specialists that run under them. And if the county's big enough, they could have two or three content specialists who
Hmm.
will take on different schools in the county if it's big enough. My
Hmm.
county has one content specialist, and um, well, all subjects, I think, at least related art subjects, have a content specialist in my county. So that's
And
just
what are
the
they
head.
doing? Yeah.
Yeah, so the content specialist role is to gather funding for physical and health education for the county, to help write and create curriculum for us to use, to create and organize pacing guide for the schools across the county to use. So there's a lot that's a part of that position. It's the work of almost three people
Hmm.
that one person is in charge of taking on.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of work, Paul.
Hmm. So, if I understand rightly, they're in more as an advisor, and there's no inspection role or assessment role or anything, is there?
So they can content specialists can come in and do, say, an audit and see if you are running your physical and health education program the way that it is supposed to be being ran. So
Hmm.
yes, they are able to do that. It's like an administrative role, but in a central office building rather than at the school.
Okay, yeah. Right, I see. Valerie, it's fascinating listening to you. And I'm going to come back and ask you some more questions. We'll maybe move a little bit more into, a little more into the wider benefits of PE, and particularly how teaching PE early on pays dividends later on in life. And we'll be right back after these messages.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
In today's educational environment, students and teachers are juggling a mix of face-to-face, online and blended learning courses. Canvas by Instructure helps teachers navigate these diverse learning experiences with a user-friendly virtual learning environment that offers flexible access to courses and a consistent learning experience, all while streamlining everyday teaching processes. The world's best schools and universities are using Canvas to create dynamic courses, collaborate seamlessly, and access actionable data that drives student success.
On the 24th to the 26th of January 2024, Bet UK is back, and even better for educators. New for 2024, Table Talks empowers educators to collaborate openly and connect deeply with like-minded individuals in the education space, as well as tech user labs, the brilliant new tutorials and working groups at BET, where technology users will learn how to get more out of their institution's tech from the top education technology experts in the world. Whatever your goal, you'll find it at BET 2024. Educators go free. Get your tickets today at www.uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC News website reports on announcements that GCSE students in England will get formulae and equations in their maths and science exams for summer 2024. The Department for Education has asked the exam regulator to extend previous support for another year to limit the impact of COVID. Most students who were due to sit GCSE exams next summer were in Year 7 when the first lockdown began. Teaching unions have welcomed the proposal, which is being consulted on. The DfE said it would mean enhanced formulae and equation sheets for pupils in maths, physics and combined science. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan said these pupils will be the last to experience 2 years of national closures during secondary school, and that it was right that they get additional support. She went on to say it was disappointing that the decision had been made so late on, as many pupils will take mocks in the coming months or so. The union ASCL welcomed the consultation, but argued that the provision of support materials should be permitted, as it would reduce some of the stress of exam preparation and allow pupils to focus on core knowledge and skills. Prior to this announcement, exams in England had been due to return to 2019 arrangements. Exams were cancelled across the UK in 2020 and 2021, and grades were based on teacher assessments. When students returned to exam halls in 2022, they were given extra support. Some measures remained in place for exams in England in 2023, with exams in the same subject spaced more apart, formulae and equation sheets in some subjects, and not being tested on unfamiliar vocabulary in modern foreign languages. But, unlike the rest of the UK, students in England were not given information on topics on which they were being tested. England was also the only nation this summer to bring back in line with 2019, with Wales and Northern Ireland planning a slow return. As a result, the drop in pass grades was steepest in England. In another week of political drama, the latest government reshuffle has seen the return of many familiar faces. For education, it means the return of former Education Secretary Damien Hines as Schools Minister. He replaces Nick Gibb, who resigned to pursue a job in the diplomatic service. A report in FE Week focuses on Hines' previous experience leading the DFE between January 2019 and July 2019, during which time the government completed reforms to technical education. Hines has previously said, after his 2019 departure, that there was still work to do on social mobility. He was replaced by Gavin Williamson. The Education Secretary stated Mr Hines is hugely experienced and who would continue to build on Nick Gibb's record of driving up standards. Mr Hines is the 6th person to hold the Schools Minister role in 18 months. The Glasgow Times reports on what it calls the long-term decline in education standards after the Institute of Fiscal Studies looked at Scotland's disappointing history in PISA figures, an international measure. Since 2012, Scottish scores in maths and science have declined. The figures also show a wide gap between the richest and poorest in maths, science and reading, but more well-off students also underperform when compared to their English counterparts. Large increases in spending and big reforms such as the Curriculum for Excellence do not seem to have translated into higher performance, according to Andrew McKendrick, one of the report's authors. A Scottish Conservative education spokesman said the report should act as a wake-up call for the SNP, and Scottish Labour said it exposed the damage the SNP has done. Finally, Schools Week reports on the invitation to schools to request a free portrait of King Charles II under a new government scheme. The scheme is costing £8 million. Those wishing to take up the offer must apply before the 2nd of February 2024. The King will be shown in ceremonial dress and delivery of the images will take place between February and April next year. The A3 size picture will be printed on high quality paper and be in a glazed frame. Schools which display pictures of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth will not be obliged to take down her portrait. Suggested placement of the image of His Majesty is reception areas or a function room or similar location. Schools will not be able to see the portrait before submitting requests. The image is not being funded from school budgets, but out of a separate pot similar to the scheme which provided a free book to every primary school pupil to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2021. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the Late Late Show on Thursday, the 23rd of November. And with me tonight, I've got Valerie Cheseldine, and we're talking about PE. Just did a quick sum there during the break there, Valerie. Roughly, broadly, you're 3,360 miles away. Isn't that something? Because you just sound like you're in the next room here.
Well, I'm glad the connection is clear.
Yeah, it's first class. Yeah, it's absolutely great. Yeah. So, Valerie, you've painted a very dynamic, colourful picture for us of what happens with young children and PE. And, you know, it's very structured. There's certainly a framework. There's standardisation. There's maybe even what we might call it like a national curriculum. You know, they can move and schools and the same thing or the same progress is happening and so on. You began talking about the importance of PE in terms of mental health and general health and fitness, diet, exercise, sleep, and so on. So what are the benefits then of PE and starting young at that age? What do you see as a result of a structured focus on PE?
So the health benefits of physical activity for young children, their academic performance, that improves just by their attention and memory. Their muscular fitness is at its peak because they're able to build strong muscles through muscular endurance, muscular strength activities, doing working on their cardiovascular health, moving along through their flexibility, which is very important. And then, touching and gaining knowledge of body composition, being aware of what it means to be physically active and eating healthy. The bone strength strengthens their bones. Brain health it lowers the risk of depression in young minds. Their long-term health allows for them to reduce their risk of chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes and obesity, which is something that we see an increasing number of. However, a physically active child could reduce the risk of getting those diseases. And then, as already mentioned, just maintaining a healthy body weight.
Yeah. And I think, yes, it is very important to acquire those outlooks, those skills, those attitudes. Very important to acquire them and then hold on to them and to get them early, I should say. Valerie, what are the kind of the obstacles, the barriers, and the threats to the great work that you are doing there? What do you face? What do young people have to overcome?
So I think that the better question is, what can the schools and community do for physical education? What can they do to help support physical activity? When thinking about barriers, that has kind of a negative approach. So when you say, well, what can the school and community do to help support a physical activity program, then that sounds more optimistic, more positive. So first, you want to consider the following. Does the school have the resources to help support your program? And if they do, does it have the funding? Does it have the funding? And that's the biggest obstacle there, Paul, is funding. Sometimes you could have the support of everyone in your community and your administration and your colleagues that you work with in the school building. But if the funding is not there, you have to find a way to get the funding, whether it's through grant writing, whether it's through fundraising, which that in itself has red tape because then you have to fill out forms to have your administration approve the fundraiser. And then, large sums of money that get fundraised have to be approved by the board at central office. So there's a lot of things going on here. Do you have the equipment you need? What are the expectations for this program? Do you need a justification letter? So these types of things, once you have all of that figured out, then whatever barrier you have or believe you have, that can be tackled. That obstacle no longer exists because you have gone through all the steps to try to figure out how you can support your program, how these kids can be physically active outside of your classroom, after school, in a program, whether it be you're raising money to have after school volleyball and you need volleyballs, okay? You're raising money to get nets, volleyballs, maybe even call a nearby school and borrow the standards and the nets. See what you can get from nearby schools first before you purchase and figure out the funding part, right? You need to collaborate with your colleagues that aren't in your school because you can do that, build a network.
So, Valerie, yeah. And I suppose this was really the next question, I was going to ask you, but we'll stick with it. Okay. PE, you said earlier, PE is something of the poor relative, in terms of other subjects and some colleagues, and it's not prioritized and it's not front and center. Are you also saying that PE isn't well financed in terms of, your schools, your districts, or however that works?
Oh, no. We are financially doing well with our physical and health education program in my county. We have a ton of support. It's in terms of if you want something that you don't have and there isn't funding there, because like everything, there's a budget. So a new fiscal year with a new budget, if you're at the end or middle of the year and that new budget hasn't been posted yet, and your content specialist or supervisor tells you, well, the funding's not there yet, but if you need this now, here's how you can attain what you need. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
there's plenty of fundraisers you can do and grant writing. So no, there's plenty of funding. You just have to learn how to advocate for your program, get the funding so that it can help support what it is you're trying to do, whether it be through your district or you independently trying to figure it out because you know that, yeah, maybe there is some funding there, but there's not enough for me to do what I want to make happen. So you have to advocate for your program.
Nobody better to do that than you, Valerie. It sounds to me. Gosh, yeah. You mentioned a justification letter. What's a justification letter?
So a justification letter, when you are trying to advocate for a piece of equipment, for example, that's in the range of $15,000 to $30,000, you want this piece of equipment, you have to write a justification letter for it. Because something of that large amount needs to not only be approved by your admin, but also needs to be approved by the board. And in
Valerie,
order
what
for
is going to cost $30,000? $30,000 would keep a whole PE outfit going in 2 schools here.
Well, so I can share that I advocated for a LU learning system. It is a interactive system that helps engage the learner and promote physical activity through an immersive 3D wall-size screen. And it's projected off of this LU learning system. There's only one
Right.
school in the whole state of Maryland that has one, and I saw it through video through a gentleman named Matt Allen, and he has one, and it was the most spectacular thing I have ever seen. And the cost for the equipment to successfully fit the class size that I have per grade level, the equipment cost at a low was $26,000. So in
Goodness.
order for me to attain those funds, I needed to advocate and write a justification letter explaining why that piece of equipment would help enhance my physical education program and then also help enhance the physical activity after school by allowing the community to be able to use it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. What does that piece of equipment do, Valerie?
It projects an interactive experience onto the walls so that students can then be in an immersive learning environment. For example, physical education teachers who have the system can use it through various units. However, again, moving back to catching and throwing, a teacher recently posted a video using the interactive system by having the students practice their overhand throwing, which is a standard that students are taught from 2nd grade up. And they are throwing the ball at these targets and say, for example, balloons. So they throw it at a balloon that's on the screen that's a wall size, and then the balloon pops. So it's like an interactive smartboard, but for physical education.
Well, Valerie, that's what I was going to say. Is it not just a big TV?
Well, you can't exactly hit a TV with a ball, Paul, but yes, it is an interactive screen.
Good one. I'm only teasing you. Good one. Very good. Yeah. So, Valerie, I was just wondering, because you talked about schools and, really realistically, how can schools improve their PE and develop it and so on? And yes, I did ask you in the form of barriers, but I suppose what I was really thinking then was, for example, how do you feel about, children having devices, electronic devices, iPads, whatever it is? Is that not, is that something that's an impediment, something of a block to what you as a committed PE teacher wants to achieve?
Let's define the context. Are you speaking in terms of inside of the physical education classroom, or are you speaking just in general when they're at home, instead of going outside, they're on an electronic device?
Well, I suppose in my mind, I'm thinking of the second definition. Yes, you know, I suspect it's the same with you. Children are glued to their devices. Now, admittedly, maybe not at the early age that you're first encountering them, but later on, it's you think there's something wrong if you see a child and they don't have a mobile phone in their hand.
I believe that there has been an increase in electronic use amongst our youth. I do
Hmm.
feel that when they are at home, what used to be structure and, say, a strict schedule with use of a device, for example, a game system, the iPad, sometimes students go home and they're allowed to touch that electronic device for an unprecedented amount of time.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, that is the state that some of our youth are in, and
Hmm.
therefore physical activity isn't encouraged, or they're not motivated to want to go outside because, yes, they are glued in to that device,
Hmm.
unfortunately. So it takes the student to want to not be plugged in all day, and then it
Hmm.
also takes the parent, the family, the environment that they're in when they go home to be a physically active environment, or an
Yeah.
environment that has structure and a schedule. If a child walks in and doesn't have those things, it can be difficult for them to want to be
Mm.
motivated to go outside and play with their friends.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So, Valerie, we're close to the end of the show. Our time is almost up. And as is traditional now on this show, I always ask a question towards the end. If you had a magic wand and only one spell that you could cast, what would you wish for that would make the life and the lot of teachers much better?
Paul, when you asked me that question earlier today, I thought about it all day. I even asked other colleagues to see what they would say, and I
Right.
promise you, everyone said something different.
Oh,
And
well, great.
everyone said something different. But here is something that it was my immediate answer, and it stuck with me all day. And I'll tell
Hmm.
you what it is: the mental health of our teachers. Educators across the globe are very passionate about their profession, or they wouldn't be doing it.
Mm.
And so when we take the day off, we don't necessarily need to tell our administrators we're ill or our child is sick. Allow us to feel okay with taking that mental day off. We just
Mm.
need a break. Sometimes we need to think about us too. So, if I had a magic wand, it could change something. I would say, for the mental health of our educators across the globe, if you don't already have this structure yet, to revert back to our 4-day weeks, where we taught school for 4 days and then we were given one day to prepare for the following week. And giving us that day to do that, yes, we had to report to the building still, but it allowed for us to break down the lessons we've already taught, reflect how are we going to change it for Thursday, Friday if needed, and then what are our plans for the next week, 2 weeks, and just take our time doing that.
Mm.
I think that the atmosphere amongst teachers in the building, it was much calmer. Everyone wasn't anxious to get out of there at 3:45. Everyone just was calm and enjoyed their job because they had that mental break. So for me, it would be to allow teachers to have a mental health day with planning, putting grades in, doing whatever it is they need to do, and not to be made feel guilty about it.
Wow, what an answer, Valerie. Now, you told me you've never been to the UK or Ireland, and that you kind of harbor a little ambition to come over here at some stage. I think if you ever do, Valerie, I think you will be grabbed at the airport and immediately you will be made Minister for Education. I really
Oh,
think
well,
so.
that's lovely. I love that. I've always dreamed of teaching overseas. And, it's funny you mentioned that because about 3 or 4 years ago, I was looking at what the requirements were to teach over in Ireland. So it's just full
All
circle.
right.
You mention it.
There you go. Very good. Yeah. Super duper. Yeah. I was just thinking there, and I'm not so sure about England, Scotland, Wales, but in Northern Ireland, in our curriculum, we have 4 areas of curriculum that carry the term education. So we've got physical education, PE, got
Hmm.
careers education, we've got religious education, and we've got personal and social education. Now, those are the only 4 areas that have the word education attached to them. Everything else is, history, geography, music, and so on. But when I was an education advisor, I was often asked, well, why? And why those 4 areas? And why do we not talk about music education? But, you know, the physical, the careers, the religion, and then the emotional and social and so on that goes in PSE, they're all about maturity, I think, and about becoming, a better human being. And I think it starts early on with the physical and us exploring the world physically and ourselves. And I think the work that you do, especially at that early stage, Valerie, is absolutely invaluable and crucial. It's the foundation. And I think you hinted at this, the foundation for, a lot of physical work for fit, healthy people, especially those who move on to become athletes and players and sportsmen and women. Fantastic.
Well, I thank you so much, Paul, for having me here on the show. I am a huge fan of Teacher Talk Radio, and I
You
am
are indeed.
I am a
Yeah,
committed listener. So
you
I
are.
thank you so much.
Yeah. You actually listened when you're doing bus duty, don't you? Did I hear that?
Oh, Paul, now come on.
No, I thought.
Well, I'm dedicated, so I turn it on. Um, when I can. So Mondays and
Right,
Tuesdays, I don't have a class during that time frame that you're doing it. So I'm able
right.
to turn on the show and listen to it. And then I leave my device in my office when I gather my students. And then I
Mhm.
try to, but it's not as effective. I'm not successful because I can't really hear it based on the
Oh,
noise of the students in the gym. But I do try sometimes to hear it and also monitor. But as a professional, I listen to it Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays. And
oh my
then
goodness.
Wednesdays and Fridays, I don't have that time at the end of the day when you run the show, at least the late show, not the late, late show, that allows me to not have an opportunity to listen to it. So, majority of the week, though, I'm there.
I think you definitely deserve a Teachers Talk radio mug, at least.
Well, I would appreciate that. Just don't tell my husband. I love cups. I love cups,
Oh,
Paul.
right.
So I collect cups, and he gets so mad when I bring a new one home. He's like, "Well,
Oh my goodness.
seriously?" He's
Yeah.
yeah. But if you give it to me, and I will cherish it and place it in my office.
There you go. Super duper. And Valerie, you're going to sit down to your Thanksgiving dinner now, aren't you?
I am, yes. I'm actually enjoying time at my sister-in-law's house and all of her extended family. So it is quite a house full right now.
Great. Valerie, enjoy your Thanksgiving dinner. You've been a fabulous guest. Thank you so much. Take care and keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. You have a fabulous weekend, Paul.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.